Thank you for staying with us. This is a special Joy News Desk edition. And thank you for, let's move on to other stories quickly. The Locked Up Investment Holders Forum says it will continue picketing the Finance Ministry despite the sector minister announcing the release of 700 million CDs to depositors affected in the banking sector cleanup exercise. And the group insists that depositors whose funds have been locked at distressed depositing taking institutions have been left out of the disbursement. Members want the Finance Minister to, as a matter of urgency, to add them to the payment plan, or they will continue to picket the Finance Ministry every Wednesday. We'll hear from them in a bit. First, here's the Finance Minister announcing the disbursement of that 700 million Ghana cedis.
We had indicated in the 2024 mid-year review of fiscal policy presented in July 2024 that Cabinet had granted approval for the disbursement of an additional 1.5 billion Ghana cedis to provide relief and bailout for those whose funds have been locked up in the fund management companies. I'm glad to inform you that the Ministry of Finance has processed the release for the first tranche of 700 million Ghana cedis of the additional 1.5 billion Ghana cedis for the Securities and Exchange Commission to further bail out the remaining customers whose funds were locked up, including Black Shield Fund Management Limited customers. Yesterday, I instructed the Controller and Accountant General to release the funds to mitigate the stress on affected persons. The 1.5 billion Ghana cedis will be released in 3 tranches. This amount will bring the number of investors to be fully settled under the Black Shield Limited to 82,096 customers, representing 92%.
Let's get on Zoom now and speak to the lead convener of the Locked Up Investment Holders Forum, Dr. Edu Anani-Antwi. Doc, thank you for joining us on Newsdesk. Now, why has your group insisted on continuous picketing despite this new announcement of disbursement by the Finance Minister? Doc, you have to unmute.
I think we need to explain this to the viewers and the general public. What the minister is saying is that an amount of 700 million is being released to pay for depositors whose funds are locked up in fund management companies which got their licenses revoked in 2019 by the Securities and Exchange Commission. 2019, the Securities and Exchange Commission revoked the licenses of some fund management companies, including the Black Shield. Government paid 50,000 each to every depositor. It is the balance that for these whole years that the people have been waiting for, government says it's going to pay part of it now. So in this year's budget, government budgeted for 4 billion. Part of that was going for NIB. Part of that was going to pay for these ones that they are paying now, which they call the legacy issues. And part was supposed to come and help some of us whose funds are now locked up in the distressed savings and loans and finance houses. Namely, we have NDK Financial Services, SIC Life Savings and Loans, Bond Savings and Loans, and SDC Financial Services. These companies are still operating. Bank of Ghana hasn't revoked their licenses, and Bank of Ghana is waiting for the ministry to make financial provision before they revoke the licenses so that they can pay us, just as they are going to pay these fund management companies. So for us, it hasn't come to our turn at all because our companies are still operating, and Bank of Ghana is expecting government to make provision there before they revoke the licenses of this institution and pay us as they are paying these fund management companies' clients now. So the 700 that is coming fine is not coming to our members who have funds in currently distressed companies whose licenses have not been revoked. This is going to pay those whose licenses were revoked, fund management companies whose licenses were revoked in 2029. So if you hear government is paying 700, it's not to us at all. So we will continue to picket until we are also taken care of, until our companies are revoked, the licenses of our companies are revoked, the companies we have invested with are revoked, and the Bank of Ghana takes the appropriate actions to pay us.
Right.
That is what Bank of Ghana is waiting for. It's waiting for financial provision from the ministry so that they can revoke the licenses of these institutions so that we too can be paid just as the investors in the fund management companies are being paid now.
Dr. Aduanani, it clearly sounds like there's a process to this. And the finance minister did mention that the payment is in tranches. In as much as I understand your plight of those in distress, are you not being a bit impatient with the finance ministry?
No, I think that is what I'm explaining. The 1.5 billion that is coming, it's not coming to the newly, if you want to call it, currently distressed specialized deposit-taking institutions, which we are part. It is not coming to us. It is coming to those whose licenses have already been revoked 5 years ago.
Yes, and I'm asking...
So these are all dead. We are not part of that. Our companies are still operating, but they have become insolvent. And Bank of Ghana says their licenses must be revoked. But before they revoke the license, they should ensure that the ministry has made financial provision so that when they revoke the licenses, we will become like the people they are paying now. The people they are paying now is one step ahead of us. Their companies where they invested, their licenses has been revoked. For us, the companies that we have invested in, they haven't revoked their licenses. So we haven't even come close to payment.
Right.
That is the difference.
And so what you're demanding now is for the licenses to be revoked to start the process of you receiving your monies.
Yes, because that is what Bank of Ghana has said. I am not saying it. Bank of Ghana says they are waiting for the ministry to make financial provisions so that they can revoke the licenses of these insolvent SDIs, and then they can pay us. In the words of the Bank of Ghana governor, it says, I can't revoke their licenses because if I revoke their licenses, the next day, the depositors will march to Bank of Ghana and say, where is our money? And I can't point them to anywhere to go for their money. So I'm waiting for the Ministry of Finance to make financial provisions towards the payment before I can revoke the licenses of these companies. So for us, our companies, those that I mentioned, plus others who may also be in financial distress, they are still operating. Their licenses has been revoked.
Right.
So the first step has not been caught. And so we are not part. And we are still going to pick it until the ministry make financial provision for the Bank of Ghana to revoke the licenses of these institutions. And we have pointed out to the ministry that out of the 4 billion budget, there is unappropriated 200 million. They say they are giving NIB 2.3, and they are using 1.5 to make this payment that they have started. So out of the 4 billion, there is a balance of 200 million. We say government should ensure that that is reserved for us, right, for the distressed financial institutions, so that we can also get paid. But it is too small. So we are saying that they should reduce the 2.3 that they have embarked upon giving to NIB. It's too much at this time. With all the problems we have, don't give 2.3 billion to NIB and watch us dying, elderly people, the sick, not getting their monies to buy medication and for their sustenance. So reduce the 2.3 you want to give to NIB and free some amount and add it to this 200 million so that some relief can be given to these distressed financial institutions, the clients of these distressed financial institutions immediately. So we will continue to pick it until the government does this for us.
But Doc, what's your latest updates on your communication with the ministry? Or what's the latest response you have received from them so far?
The latest response is that 2 weeks ago, when we met the officers of the Financial Sector Division, they said they were sending a letter to the ministry, to the Bank of Ghana. According to the ministry, they don't have a hold on how much these lockup investments, the value of this lockup investment in this specialized deposit-taking institutions. So they want Bank of Ghana to give them the figures. So they were writing to the Bank of Ghana. Last Wednesday, we went and wanted to check up on the ministry. We didn't get the people there to respond, but at least after a hard struggle, we got on the phone to the head, the head of the session, which is handling it, and he told us that the letter has been dispatched to Bank of Ghana. So we are going to follow up on Bank of Ghana, and if Bank of Ghana is hearing me, Minister of Finance says a letter has been sent to you, so please respond, and then we will see what decision the Ministry of Finance is going to take. But we will continue to pick it until we get results.
Dr. Edu Anane there, who is the convener of the Locked Up Investments Holders Forum. Doc, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you too.
All right, we'll continue to keep an eye on this and bring you the updates as the story unfolds. But right now, we'll take a break for business.
It's now time for Business on Newsdesk. My name is Winston Taki, and now to our first business story. Ghana recorded a 10% drop in foreign direct inflows in 2023. That's according to the consulting firm Bridgewater Advisors. This is the lowest inflow over the past decade and 28% lower than the pandemic days. Here is more in the report.
The report stated that FDI inflows to Ghana fell by $1.4 billion in 2023. This followed a dismal performance in 2022. The country's shares of inflows into Africa and West Africa between 2024 and 2023 averaged 6% and 23% respectively. However, outflows rose by 46% to $55.76 million in 2023. In half-year 2024, Ghana estimated FDI components out of total registered investment was $186.16 million, with 69 registered projects predominantly into manufacturing, about 81% of investment value. Meanwhile, Ghana remained second in West Africa after Nigeria in the volume of greenfield investment projects. The nation has a decade of average of 36 projects compared to Nigeria's 56 projects.
Cultural economist Professor Robert Adu is suggesting the adoption of a food purchasing regime by the government to preempt food inflation in the coming months amidst a ban on export of essential grains. The Ministry of Food and Agriculture affected a ban on the export of maize, rice, soybean as part of measures against the possible impact of the prevailing dry spell that has since devastated several farms in the 8 regions of the country. But Professor Adu asserts farmers will only subscribe to the ban if the government buys the local commodities at a competitive price to avoid hoarding, which could lead to inflation in food prices.
The prevailing dry spell has destroyed many farmlands, bringing about little to low farm yields. To avert a possible food crisis, the Ministry of Food and Agriculture announced plans to tap into the ECOWAS grain reserves and other private partnerships to supplement the country's grain stocks. Agric economist Professor Robert Adu warns of forex impacts if food imports become necessary with threats of food price hikes.
We expect that food prices are going to rise again. Now, government has promised to also import additional grains into the country. Already we are struggling with exchange rate issues, and so you now have to go and get a lot of foreign exchange to go and bring in this, putting a lot of pressure on the already struggling cedi. I'm not sure whether government will immediately get enough to bring in this. Already we are struggling with reserves. So if they have money, fine, but it will also put a lot of pressure on the local currency. So it will reflect in depreciation of the local currency. That is it.
Professor Adu believes the imposed ban can only be effective if the government introduces a food purchasing regime to avoid hoarding by farmers.
I am just praying and hoping that government will be able to maybe buy the grains in the system at some competitive prices and then leverage on the facilities that Ghana Buffer Stock Company and Ghana Commodity Exchange, the facilities they have, so that once government gets them from farmers and they store in these facilities, they can release them onto the market at periodic times so that it can ease the prices going forward. Otherwise, if we leave it to the forces of demand and supply, what is going to happen is that those who have money now are likely to go in, then they will buy in large volumes, they will hoard it, and then when prices have escalated to certain levels, then they will bring it out and they will take advantage of the shortage and now price it at levels that will go beyond the pocket of the ordinary person.
For Joy News, my name is Emmanuel Bright Kweku.
That'll be all for business here on Newsdesk. My name is Winston Taki. We have more news for you after this break. Stay tuned.
And that ends it for the Joy News Desk Bulletin. For more news, log on to myjoyonline.com to keep you updated and informed. My name is Sweetie Abochi. I'll see you again shortly.